we will tomorrow night. Donald Trump still on the stump, trying to change the momentum. Chris is next.
Leland says he never got to the part of telling you why Trump said what he said about Kamala Harris. Well, I'm Chris Cuomo, and I'll give you the answer first because it's the only question that matters. This wasn't an accident. Thank you for the company here at NewsNation. We just had a major moment in this presidential election. Your phones, your screens are flooded with reaction to Donald Trump disrespecting a room full of black journalists on purpose. The headline is simple, just as it is ugly and obvious. Trump is who they thought he is. I don't fault the organization for the invitation. I know there were mixed feelings among the body. The co-chair of the conference, Karen Attiah, resigned in the hours before the event today. Others wanted him canceled. I get it. Clearly, I'm not a black journalist, but as a journalist and a citizen, I think the NABJ did a service to black and all voters by inviting Trump, as they have in the past, by the way. He just accepted this time. And you know why. He believes he has an opportunity to get more of the black vote. But he has a very limited understanding. He thinks it's because he can divide them from Democrats, because that's what he does. He saw an opportunity, not to make a case to them, not to be progressive, not to be positive, to be reductive. And he was right, there was an opportunity, but not one where he gets a fawning plea from black people saying, save us. Instead, it was an opportunity to show all of you what he is about. Period. Here's what happened when he was asked if Vice President Kamala Harris is merely a DEI hire.
Some of your own supporters, including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major party ticket, as a DEI hire.
How do you define DEI? Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
give me a
literally
definition,
the word.
then.
Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman?
Well, I can say no. I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much, and she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She is always identified as a black woman.
I respect either one. I respect either one, but she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn, and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that
I think somebody should look into that, too, when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
Yeah, it's amazing how come people can get a little hostile and nasty when you kind of question their existence. You know, it's weird. You know, I guess black people can be funny like that sometimes, you know, when you kind of like negate their existence by making it sound like biracial isn't a thing. He's not in a MAGA event where he can say whatever he wants and they're going to applaud. He's not this group's spirit animal. He's also taking flack when asked about what he thought black jobs are.
Coming from the border are millions and millions of people that happen to be taking black jobs. You had the best.
What exactly is a black job, sir?
A black job is anybody that has a job. That's what it is. Anybody that has a job.
All right.
And
Mr.
they're taking the employment away from black people.
I'll tell you what the mistake is. That this doesn't matter. That this is just media noise and people are going to play Trump as a bigot. I'm not playing him as a bigot. It's not my point. My point is, you are one of two things when you're running a race. You're somebody who has an idea that brings people together, or you try to divide and conquer. Those are the two paths to power. Trump is a demagogue and a divider. That's the truth. You're seeing it in the room, okay? And a lot of people are playing this as Trump making a mistake, and this is who he is, and what else did you expect? I'm not so sure. There is a version of the truth where he decided to do this on purpose, that when he didn't get the fawning reception that for whatever delusional reason he thought he was going to get, he decided to play to division by questioning biracial identity, to play to the naive, mostly uneducated white perspective that being Indian and black, that's not a thing. You can't be thing. You got to be one thing, right? I'm white, right? Mock it. They're another. They're not us. They're not part of being great again. Let's go back to the old days when you were just one thing, like most diversity considerations. Now, after shoving their foot so far in their mouth that they taste nothing but leather, any other politician would apologize. Not Trump. He posts on Truth Social later, the questions were rude and nasty, often in the form of a statement, but we crushed it. If by crushed it, he meant crushed the chances that black voters are going to give him a second or third chance, he may be right. But this was no accident. This is not a one-off. This is who he is. And I say the NABJ did you a service by giving Donald Trump a platform, not to have people speak for him, not to explain what he said afterwards, but you saw he is what he is. Now, let's get perspective. Stephen A. Smith, he is a scheduled speaker at the NABJ. His take. Thank you, first of all, my friend, the ESPN host. I hope you're watching the Stephen A. Smith show. It is great, great. Thank you for making time on short notice. Make your witness.
I wasn't surprised. It was disappointing, but nevertheless, far from surprised and very, very predictable. Anytime former President Trump gets a tough question, it's nasty. What I caution the black community to take heed to is when we sit up there and we utilize that as a form to bring up his racist tendencies or what have you. You got to be careful about that because he did the same thing to Caitlin Collins, who doesn't happen to be black, from CNN. He called her nasty. He said her questions were nasty when she challenged him. He's done that on many, many occasions. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, or Asian American or whomever. If he's averse to the kind of questions that you're asking him and he feels a bit too challenged and not received in a proper manner, as you articulated earlier, he's going to accuse you of being rude. He's going to accuse you of being nasty and what have you. And the only reason I bring up that point about us as black Americans being careful about stuff like that is because the minute we go out there and say, look at how he spoke to the black journalist, you're going to have supporters showing up and showing how he spoke to a white male, a white female, an Asian American, a Latino or 100%. A Latina, et cetera, to point out those things. And then that dilutes the case against him in that regard. Let's just call it what it is. It's immature. It's unpresidential. It's divisive. It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of reasons a lot of us don't want him to be the next president of the United States because we know we're in desperate need of this country galvanizing and coming together, and he doesn't seem to be a galvanizing force.
So, Stephen A., what is the play in your mind to question whether or not Harris is black? Does he think he was going to separate her from the black community and give himself a fair chance? Is he really just dog whistling or signaling to his MAGA folk that this biracial thing is just more of this crazy lefty stuff where now people are two things? What was his play?
I think it was the latter. I think it was dog whistling. Make no mistake about it, because he wants to cater to his base. He knows they're not going anywhere, but he wants to show them that he's still that guy they voted for in 2016 and they voted for in 2020 that was in the lead in 6 of the 7 polls before Biden decided to step aside. He wants to make sure that he's showing them in the presence of others he's not going to deviate from who they know him to be. He's going to be somebody that can be insulting, petulant, immature, and with a penchant, if not a proclivity, flat out proclivity of getting in his own way. And this is one of those situations. You go to the National Association for Black Journalism Conference, which is where I'll be tomorrow, and my show First Take on ESPN will be there Friday morning. You go to a place like that, you know what kind of audience you're expecting to run into. It was no surprise to him, but it was an opportunity because they couldn't work out a time for Vice President Kamala Harris to show up. So he had it to himself. And I thought he was being a bit slick by showing up today at 12 noon Central Time anyway, because as a black journalist, as somebody that has gone to the NABJ on many, many occasions, let me assure you, most people ain't showing up by 12 noon on a Wednesday. You want a packed house where everybody is there waiting for you. You usually show up on a Thursday or beyond. To show up on a 12 noon on a Wednesday afternoon, it was like he was hoping to slide in and slide out without running into too many folks. And so I thought it was very, very slick on his part. But Rachel Scott, who is a sensational reporter for ABC, does a magnificent job. I thought she set the tone right because she didn't speak about herself. It wasn't personal or anything like that. She said, hey, a lot of people weren't comfortable with you coming here. That was true. A lot of people were not comfortable with him coming in. And then she brought up a litany of things he uttered out of his mouth. And evidently quoting him accurately is something he deems rude and insulting. But again, it should not be a surprise. We should have seen that coming. I don't know anybody who's surprised. I sincerely hope your audience is not.
Here's why, just one of the reasons that you love me as a friend, but you know I'm a dope, is I thought after the assassination attempt, he was going to pivot and he was going to use it as an opportunity. I've never seen anybody blow an opportunity the way he did at the RNC, other than those first 20 minutes. But he talked so long and so ugly afterwards that I forgot what he said in the first 20. This one was another opportunity. Times are tough in big cities. Times are tough in all kinds of minority pockets. They can't be happy with the leadership that they've had. There is an opportunity. Do you believe he just blew it and this is a major moment?
I think it's a major moment. I think he blew it with a lot of blacks, but there are some people that are Trump supporters who happen to be black, and I don't think they're going anywhere. They look at the economy that was under him prior to COVID kicking in. They give him a lot of credit for that. But also, I'm talking about people who support Trump, not me, probably not you, but people who support him. They're of the mindset, I think we have to embrace their belief in this utter disgust in our government, the fact that they've been manipulated, the fact that they feel played, the fact is they're right about that. Our government has played us for far too much, but they've played all of us, black folks, white folks, everybody in between. We've all been played by our government who've been a gross disappointment over the years. And so when he comes out, he's belligerent, he's immature, he's cantankerous, he's insulting, et cetera, they're like, yeah, way to go, because that's what they want to say to our government officials, regardless of the absence of substance to his argument. Think about it. Rachel Scott asked him a question. What did he say? I've never been asked such a nasty, rude question. You didn't even say hello or anything like that. This is what he was saying, you know, and you're doing all of this, and it took you about 2 minutes to get to the substance of the question that she was actually asking. And you have people who gravitate to that because they speak to the disgust of Capitol Hill and the fourth estate that has spent decades covering it, and in the eyes of a lot of American citizens, covering up or not covering enough of the atrocious behavior and lack of production emanating from Capitol Hill. They don't even get to the substance. They just know that he speaks to them in a matter they want to speak to politicians on Capitol Hill. And that's what this is about.
Amen, amen. I agree. The grievance is real. He is an agent of it. People want disruption, but what they don't want is you to come at them. They want you to go at the other people. Today, you you can pick your metaphor. He crossed the line, he stepped on a third rail, whatever metaphor you want.
I want to say one thing real quick, Chris. It's important to me to say this because I'm on my way to the NABJ, and I saw a lot of people speaking, and they were opposed to him coming and speaking at the NABJ. I am not one of those people. See, at some point to listen, do I think he's going to lie? Yes. Do I think he's going to embellish? Yes. Do I think that we need to have fact checkers to, once he finishes talking, to double check everything that he says? Absolutely true. Maybe not when he's on stage, because we don't do that at any other network. We should not have done that at the NABJ. We should not have tried to. I'm saying this, though. Whether you like it or not, he's the GOP nominee. One of two people is going to be the president of the United States. And there is no journalism organization. There is no journalism organization that should be saying we shouldn't talk or we shouldn't give a platform to the GOP nominee, because either the GOP nominee or the Democratic nominee is going to be the president of the United States. If he wins the re-election, you don't get to ignore him then. He doesn't ever have to talk to you, but he's still going to impact your life. Therefore, you make sure you do everything you can to have that man in front of you so you can ask what needs to be asked, and we can have answers and behavior like he put on display today, on display to defer to.
Yeah, you guys did a service, not just to black voters, to all black voters. If you hadn't invited him, then, look, we've learned the lesson time and time again. When you silence, what you wind up doing is empowering what you ignore, because they just go to another friendly venue and say all the things that you would have checked. And that's what happened today.
I was just speaking on it because there are a plethora of people associated with the NABJ that wanted nothing to do with him being there. They were adamantly opposed to it. And although I get it, I want to say I think they were wrong because of the reasons I articulate.
Look, that is your right as a member of the organization. As a consumer, as a citizen, as a journalist, I think you guys did us a service. Stephen A. Smith, I love you and thank you.
Thank you. Love you too, man. Good to see you. Talk to you later.
I think it's a huge moment in the race. I think it was a huge opportunity for Trump. When we come back, I want to bring in well-respected journalists, political insiders, NewsNation contributor Lindsay Granger, Raynard Jackson, who's a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, and Trump supporter, and former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. What will this moment mean? Because it is a moment. Next.
I have been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln. That's my answer.
That is called a lead balloon. Trump earlier today speaking at the NABJ, the National Association for Black Journalists. We just had a moment in this election. How long will it last? Will it go from a moment to momentum? What will it mean? We don't know. We're living it. Let's get reaction from people with better minds. NewsNation contributor Lindsay Granger, Raynard Jackson, member of the National Association of Black Journalists, former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. First, let's have a little hype check. Anybody believe I'm overselling? This is not a moment. This is just another day. Anybody believe that? Okay. So, Lindsay, I'll start with you. What did it mean today, and what is your read on what Trump's thinking was in saying she's not really one of you, Harris? She's Indian.
Listen, I'm on the same page as you and Stephen A. Smith. At this point, we understand what Trump tactics are. I think it was right of the NABJ convention to invite him there because historically, this is what they've done is open up that invitation. I thought that he was going to go up there and have something to say. So I was of the thought process of you thinking that he would take this opportunity to actually talk to black voters that he keeps claiming to garner and gather. We understand that the black voter is upset and has expressed those concerns with the Democratic Party. But we also know that it doesn't technically mean that there's any more or less going to the Republican Party. So it's important to try to capitalize and have conversations with black people that are interested in exploring that. And he could have talked about the economy. He could have talked about inflation. He could have talked about many things, but instead he railed off on Kamala and then decided to attack Kamala's racial identity at a black journalism convention. It's really absurd. And when you think about the idea of what he said, that she is not black, and it doesn't define her as black. It's like, what makes him think that he has the litmus test as a white person to decide that if it doesn't go through his mind and it doesn't pass his ignorance, that makes her black or not? I mean, we know she's an Alpha Kappa Alpha. We know she went to Howard, a historically black college, and we know she's represented as a black woman for years of her life. So to come there and to use the time to do that and to condense the time to 30 minutes instead of an hour and to do those things, to me, was a real missed opportunity when there's so much that people want to talk about and so many people of color that are really struggling.
And, look, Reynard, you know how sometimes you have to give an education to your white friends about why things are the way they are? Let me return the favor, okay? This is very white, lowbrow thinking that if you're Indian and black, that maybe like you're really just one. It's a uniquely white misperception of racial identity. And I'm not surprised that he feels that way, Reynard. I am surprised that he thought it would play where he was. What does it mean to you in terms of a moment in the campaign?
Couple things, Chris. Thank you for having me on your show. I think you're based in New York. I'm in New York all the time. And Chris, sometimes I would love to take you behind the scenes of what it's like being black in the Republican Party and part of MAGA. I think you will find it interesting, to say the least. Number one, this was a sister soldier moment. And for you all who are not old enough to remember 1982, Bill Clinton went to Jesse Jackson's annual Push conference. They had this radical, crazy, feminist black rapper named Sister Soldier. And Bill Clinton went into Jesse Jackson's house and did exactly what Donald Trump did today. Chris, you were around back then. You know this was the Sister Soldier moment on steroids, number one. Number two,
I do not agree, Reynard. I was around. I remember it, and I remember it as Soldier, J-A, but he did not go in there looking to find a way to mess with what matters to black people. I do not think that's what Bill Clinton wanted to do.
Bill Clinton he made a great calculated decision. And Chris, then the other thing is, I've been involved with NABJ for decades. They are not a professional group. They are a Democratic group. They made a conscious decision, their leadership, to be a vestige of the Democratic National Committee. I'm speaking from experience. And then the third thing is, Chris, they were the reporters asking the question. The agreement was that they would ask questions that was relevant to the black community. Listen, I've been black most of my life, Chris, and I know that's hard to believe, but I am. I self-identify as black. Let me tell you something, Chris. I know the Joy Reids, the Roland Martin, all these crazy, radical, liberal Democrat operatives, and not one time do you ever go out for a drink, Chris, or a meal, and they're talking about Trump speaking to black women the way they claim he does. We're talking about illegal immigration and its devastating impact on the black community. And when Trump said black job, every black person with any shred of credibility, Chris, know what Trump was talking about. Every black that I just named, we have sat down at a restaurant and said, when was the last time you saw a black at a construction site? Because the illegals are taking our job. So they knew exactly what Trump was saying. And so the NABJ and Rachel Scott, she's a disgrace to the industry.
Oh, come on.
Reynard, for her to open up. No, hold on, Chris.
As a journalist, hold on a second. I got you, but you're filibustering a little bit. And I want to bring Nina in. Look, I am not someone who is going to explain blackness to anybody. It's not my right. It's not my place. That's why I have you. But I am a journalist. And Rachel did the job, okay? She was tone neutral in how she talked to him. She treated him as a professional, and she was not treated professionally. But let me bring in Nina. Nina, what's your take on this?
I'm just perplexed at Brother Reynard, but I'm going to leave that in the parking lot and just say, this is echoes of the past. I mean, it really is. There should be no surprise that President Donald J. Trump is a reflection of that past. The whole notion of the one drop rule, you got Professor Turner in here tonight, that one drop of black blood makes you black. Black people didn't start this fire. White people who were in control started this fire in trying to define who is black and who is white. Now, when it comes to biracialness, a lot of them act like they confused. And I love, Chris, how you laid that out at the beginning of your remarks, that I'm confused that y'all confused that biracial people exist not only in this country, but in this world. But it was a mind-blowing experience with President Donald J. Trump. Miscegenation happened, all of that stuff. And then when we talk about race itself, race is a social construct. So now I got to remind our audience of this. People made this up. There is only one race. It is the human race. But since the Republicans want to be preoccupied with it, since they want to call Vice President Harris the affirmative action candidate, let me affirmatively say to my Republican colleagues that 45 of the 46 presidents of these United States of America were affirmatively white men. 45 of the 46. And 46 of the 46 vice presidents were affirmatively white men. In other words, it is disingenuous for them to come at the vice president in this way. It is obscene for them to be so obsessed with her ethnic or racial heritage. And I agree with my colleague Lindsay. President Trump had an awesome opportunity to come up in that piece and talk about what he wants to do to help empower the black community, to talk about the strife, particularly in the black community. But when the black community is feeling that kind of strife, that kind of economic pressure, we know that we are usually the canary in the coal mine for all other working class people. But instead, the Republicans are unserious because they thought they were going to be running and indicting the Joe Biden administration, and they don't know what to do with Vice President Harris, so they just throwing stuff against the wall and trying to see if it will stick. The dog is not hunting right now.
But the dog whistle was going on, Lindsay. And
the dog did whistle for
my
sure.
take on it was pretty simple, which is if everybody in there had kissed his booty when he came in and said, "Save us from the Democrats, save us," he would have been a very different cat. And he would have talked to them and talked policy and how they failed you. And when they started asking him about what he didn't want to answer for, which is the DEI stuff that he's selling to the MAGA crowd, this is why you got to be afraid, because this is what they're going to do, and this is the personification of it. She's coming at you as like a bundle of radical left incarnate. You got to vote for me. He tried to run it at the NABJ, and he didn't like the reception. The question is, Lindsay, to you, how does it resonate? Does it last? Does this get written off as exaggerated hysteria of the left and their black allies?
No, I think it's real. Actually, I'm blown away that he's surprised by the questioning. It seemed like Trump himself was caught off guard about people bringing up past comments about black people, about the conversation that was happening within the NABJ organization and beyond about him being there. So unless his team wholly steps out of the news and what's happening on a day-to-day basis, which it seems like they do because of his answer specifically about what is happening in the black community. So, Reynard, I want to talk about that Sister Soldier moment that you brought up, because that was a very poignant moment. That didn't happen, right? Because you said a candidate has an opportunity, like the Sister Soldier moment, to take a bold stance against certain extremes within their party. Well, Trump did not do that. He actually had an opportunity too when he was asked about Sonia Massey, which is a serious issue, particularly to all people, but black women specifically, when they watch that young lady die for no reason on camera. And we know that that police officer will hopefully be put in jail. And he was asked specifically about something that he proposed, which was an immunity for police officers, which he neglected to respond to. He just said he doesn't know that much about that situation, a situation that deeply impacts people all over this country right now, that we're nonstop talking about, particularly as black journalists that have to cover stories day to day, looking at how that was handled. He had no awareness of it and no authority on that big situation. And so that shows his lack of connection to it. So I think that that's an important issue to discuss and something that he needs to know about if he's going to be president.
All right, guys, I got to jump. Nina, Lindsay, Reynard, thank you each and all. Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. I hope the conversation continues. I hope we don't just decide to go into our mutual corners and explain it away and move on. If you want progress in this country, you've got to have conversations that are uncomfortable. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Coming up, speaking of uncomfortable conversations, Bill O'Reilly is coming in to discuss what he thinks. Now, you know I love having those conversations. I'm looking forward to it. Does this matter to the campaign? Is this bad for Trump? Next. quick thing here, okay? J.D. Vance was asked in a scrum about what Trump said. And his first point was Trump doesn't do rehearsed things. This is why he's great, because he goes into hostile territory. I guess blacks are hostile territory. And he says, I think he pointed out the fundamental chameleon-like nature of Kamala Harris. Listen, as a white person, okay, please stop talking this way. People who are of mixed race are both of those racial identities. Do you understand? So if you are Indian and black, and there's never been an Indian of your kind in that office before, but there was a black person, you will still be a first. It's not confusing. You are not a chameleon, okay? You are not an other. This is part of the reality of identity, and it is not fake. It's not that she thinks she's something that she isn't. It's that you are limiting her because of your own precepts, and you think it's going to help you. Stop. Stop. Let's bring in Bill O'Reilly right now. What do you think of this, big man? How much does this matter?
I don't know. I don't know how much it matters. It's 2016, Redu, Megyn Kelly, same thing. Exactly the same thing. So
that was just about how he talked to the reporter. I agree with you on that. He calls lots of women mean and nasty when they're not doing or saying as he likes. But the play he made on Harris. It was exactly the
same thing, Cuomo.
I agree. I'm asking about the play on Harris.
It was exactly the same. I'll get to that. So okay. When Megyn Kelly threw that question out about, multiple things allegedly that Donald Trump did against women, Trump got angry. He got emotional. He always does. He always will. It's not going to change. And then it became a big thing. So Rachel Scott did exactly the same thing. No context to a question. No, well, on this day you said this in the context of this conversation. It was basically a gotcha question so she could virtue signal to her crew that doesn't like Trump. That's what she did. She's 32 years old. She doesn't know how to interview. If she wanted to make a point, she picks one of the things that she listed that Trump allegedly did denigrate blacks and asks him about it. Like the birth certificate for Barack Obama. That's an interesting story. I debunked that, by the way, by getting both the Honolulu Advertiser and the Star, the two newspapers, and getting the original birth announcements from both. That would have been impossible for anybody to fake. I did that. So to ask a question about why did you do that for Barack Obama, why did you carry on this conspiracy, that's a legitimate question. But she threw everything in the world at him because she wanted to set a tone. And then the insulting part was, well, a lot of people don't think you should be here. Like, oh, that's not how you treat someone, former president in particular, when they come on into your forum. So Rachel Scott blew it. Donald Trump blew it. And the happiest person in the country tonight is Kamala Harris. Because she's sitting there cackling. Look at this. Yeah, look at this. Look at Trump. He's just alienated millions of black voters who aren't going to really get what happened there. The broadside against Kamala Harris was that she's a phony, that she used one bit of ethnicity to do this, one bit to do that. But Trump didn't articulate it. But let me send this message to everybody. Any American who injects skin color into any conversation these days in a negative way is a fool. Period. You're foolish. Skin color doesn't have anything to do with politics, with the way we live, and who we are as Americans. It has nothing to do with it. Now, if you are a person who lives and dies on skin color, I feel sorry for you. I don't believe Trump is that. Trump believes that he helped African Americans economically, which he did, and the stats prove it, and got no credit at all. Was called a racist, was called a bum, was called every name under the book. And Trump's going, what is this? My economic policies, real wages are up, black unemployment historically low. Why are they calling me a bum? Okay, well, because identity politics is part of the Democratic Party's platform. That's why. So Donald Trump did not help himself in this regard. This will be looped over and over and over again. More people will think he's a racist, and Kamala Harris is going, oh, look at me. Kamala Harris gave a very, very good speech last night in Atlanta. Very smooth, very under control. Totally deceptive speech. Totally deceptive. No media outlet called her on it. Said Trump refused to debate her. That's not true. Trump gave her a little jazz, saying, hey, you know, when the convention coronates you, then we'll talk about it. He didn't say, I'm not going to debate you. But Harris can get away with this because the press is corrupt. Terribly corrupt. So that's my encapsulation. What else do you want to know tonight, Cuomo?
That is it. I'm going to thank you for making your witness here on the show.
That's it, okay.
I appreciate you doing it.
All right. So people want to get more in-depth analysis with no panels of 18 people. You go to BillO'Reilly.com. You know,
he's criticizing the format of my show right there is what he's doing. Well, look.
Oh, you bet I am. You bet it. You should have pinned me right after Stephen A. And that would have gotten you bigger ratings, and it would have been much. And that panel that you had, those three people, they were good. But you blew it tonight. That's okay. You're talking to the ratings master of all time in cable news. And I'm honest. Okay? That's what you should have done. You didn't do it. I'm out of here. I'm not going to talk race tonight or tomorrow or over the weekend. I don't do that, ever.
Okay.
See you.
I appreciate you. I'll see you next week. We're going to take calls coming up next. Let me just say a few things. He may be right. I don't do the show just for ratings. I do it because I believe I came back into TV to do what I think is right. And race absolutely matters in our politics and in our country. Maybe not to a white guy like me, because it's not used against me, but it is used against people. It's being used against Kamala Harris, and it's cheap and it's obvious. So we're going to talk about it. It's not the only thing that matters, but to say that it doesn't actually makes it a bigger problem than it is. So we're going to keep talking about things. I'm going to have a diversity of voices. It won't rate the best because I'm not picking a side, except your side of giving you food for thought. And we're going to do it directly next. Your calls. Let's get after it. Time for you to have your say. Who do you got, Dustin?
I have me. I want to have my say right now.
Well, you're not really included.
Well, I am right now because I'm a little ticked off because I think Bill O'Reilly just insulted the programming of this show, and I'm not that happy about it.
Yeah.
He feel like
you screwed up. You should have had him second because we'd have higher ratings. Because if there's somebody that America wants to hear from when black journalists are offended by Donald Trump, it's O'Reilly, who says race doesn't matter.
I love the guy, but I felt that was a personal attack against me. Game on.
No,
Game
it was a personal attack against me. He wouldn't personally attack you.
One of us. Okay, anyway, I'm moving on. I'm going to be the bigger person. So should you. Okay, let's go to TC from Massachusetts.
TC, my man. What do you got?
Cuomo, why the heck? Why? I give Trump credit for going into this lion's den. And he did go into hostile territory. And you don't think so? Or is that racist to say today?
I think that calling the NABJ hostile territory is wrong. And I agree, he had an opportunity. He should have gone in there, not messed around with someone's race like an idiot, and talked to interests of people in the media who are of color, the policy situations that have made life better for black families across the country. That was the opportunity. But you go in there and say there's no such thing as mixed race? Come on. Next. I told this guy who's a mentor of mine, a great journalist named Steve Salerno, to call in, and he's calling me on my personal phone.
Oh,
Steve, what kind of genius are you?
I know. Yeah? Steve knows. Steve, you know what number to call. Come on. We do this. We play this game all the time, Steve.
Come on.
Seriously. Okay, let's go to Tina from Arizona.
Tina, what's your question?
Hi, Chris.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question. I have a comment, actually. I believe that Kamala Harris was supposed to debate J.D. Vance, and who is married to an Indian American, and he's thrown off. So he's trying to. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know. I don't get the analogy there. I'll tell you what, though. What's the analogy? Go ahead.
The analogy is that he's calling her, oh, now you're black, because he had it all set up for J.D. Vance and his wife, whose parents are Indian immigrants, to debate her and bring race into it, because that's what he does.
Look,
that's my analogy.
Two things. If J.D. Vance's wife were Indian and black, he better not go home tonight, right? Because he's defending a stupid thing that is damaging, okay? Look, this is ignorant and arrogant at once, okay? It makes it seem like being biracial isn't a thing. It's not just that Kamala Harris was playing it to advantage. That's not Trump's point. Trump's point is that this is another aspect of radical left thinking, that they just mix people up now, like miscegenation's not a thing. That's his play. I think it's a bad play. I think he had an opportunity, and I don't think you blame the people for asking the obvious. And I think O'Reilly going after, I don't even know the reporter who asked the question, but the idea that she was virtue signaling, she asked, what do you mean with the DEI thing? What more straight question do you get than that? He can play it one way with MAGA. He can't play like that with the people that he's targeting. Next.
Okay, next we're going to go to the Boogie Down, Daphne from the Bronx.
Ooh, the Boogie Down Bronx. What do you got?
Hi, Chris. I want to know, what do you think about former President Trump's nephew, Fred, being on television tonight, calling him a racist, and said that he would vote for Kamala Harris and even campaign for her if she acts. What do you think about that?
I think that when your party goes after you, that's a little interesting. When your family consistently is not around you or trash talks you, I don't know why it doesn't resonate with people, except for one thing. The level of pain, anger, and desperation in this country towards the system, towards what's now called the establishment or the elites, the deep state, is so real. They are so desperate for better and disruption that they are forced to forgive such obvious failings in their spirit animal, Donald Trump. I do not question any of those aspects. I question the choice of change agent. The grievance is real. The need for disruption and change is real. I believe the whole party system should be exploded. I just don't understand why they're putting it all on Trump. I think they could do better, but that's why we have elections. Next.
We have to go to your final thought, and I'm going to try to find Steve Salerno in the meantime.
He's not smart enough to figure out how to call in?
I don't know.
All right, so we'll go to break, and then we'll do a final thought. A final thought from somebody who helps me shape my own. Steve Salerno, great journalist. What do you got?
I don't have him. I'm sorry, I don't have him. He's not answering his phone.
You just said there he is.
No, because I was forget it. Just do your final thought.
Boy, you're even more scarier when you got that echo. So, what Steve's point was that, hey, you don't think being white is something that's now an issue and sometimes seen as a negative? Yeah, probably. There's reaction formation with all kinds of identity issues going on in our politics, but the idea that we should never discuss it. What gets better if you ignore it? Tell me, what gets better when you ignore it? It sounds like bad parenting advice. So, look, you got to have conversations. It can't just be all gotcha all the time. The point of what happened with Trump and the NABJ is not to say that blacks are hostile territory. That's not true. The point is to have the